Somewhere right now, in a small room with gray walls and one overhead light, a detective is about to do something that breaks every rule you've ever seen in a crime show. He's not going to accuse. He's not going to yell. He's not going to slam a folder on the table. He's just going to sit there, arms crossed, and wait. He's going to stay quiet. Because he already knows something most of us don't. Confessions almost never start with a confession. They start with an explanation. I just want to explain what actually happened. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why that single sentence, the one you've probably said this week, maybe this hour, is quietly one of the most damaging habits a human being can have. This isn't really a video about interrogation rooms. It's about every version of that room you walk into without realizing it. The group chat where you type 3 paragraphs defending a decision nobody questioned. The meeting where you justify a choice you already had the authority to make. The text you rewrite 4 times so it doesn't sound harsh. You are, in a very real sense, interrogating yourself every single day. And you're the one holding the flashlight. So let's go back to that room, because the psychology here isn't a metaphor. It's documented, and it's brutal. For decades, police interrogations looked the way movies show them. Bright lights, threats, pressure, until someone broke. But that method had a serious flaw. It produced a flood of false confessions because anyone, guilty or innocent, will eventually say almost anything to make unbearable pressure stop. So law enforcement changed strategy. The modern technique is called minimization. Instead of attacking the suspect, the interrogator does something disarming. They act sympathetic, almost like they're on your side. I get it. Anyone in your position might have done the same thing. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. This technique works precisely because it invites explanation. The moment a person feels safe enough to over-explain, one documented study found that under psychologically manipulative but non-violent interrogation tactics like this, they start filling silence with detail. Detail the interrogator never asked for. Detail that quietly builds a story that can be used against them. One documented study found that under psychologically manipulative but non-violent interrogation tactics like this, 69% of subjects gave false confessions. 69%. Not because they were guilty, because explaining themselves felt like the safest thing to do when it was actually the trap. Now here's the uncomfortable part. You don't need a detective across the table for this to happen to you. Your brain doesn't distinguish between an actual interrogation and the feeling of being judged. A raised eyebrow from your boss. A slow reply from a friend. A "we need to talk" text. Your nervous system reacts almost exactly like that suspect's did, producing explanation as a defense mechanism, whether or not anyone actually attacked you. There's a clinical term for explaining yourself before anyone has even questioned you. It's called anticipatory clarification. You've done this. Everyone has. You sense a criticism coming, real or imagined, and you rush to disarm it before it lands. I'm not saying this to be mean, but researchers describe this as your brain trying to inoculate your words, injecting a small dose of the criticism into your sentence, so the real thing can't hurt as much when it arrives. Except inoculations are supposed to make you stronger. This one doesn't. Study after study shows the opposite effect. In 2025, researchers studying written communication found something specific. Hedged, overqualified language, the "I don't want this to sound rude, but" style of phrasing, consistently makes the speaker seem less competent. And here's the twist that should really sting. The effect is strongest for people who already hold power. The more capable and authoritative you actually are, the more that habit costs you. Over-explaining doesn't read as humility from a leader. It reads as doubt. You're not softening your image. You're leaking your own confidence out through your mouth, one sentence at a time. And it's not just us doing this to ourselves anymore. In 2026, A Stanford study published in the journal Science tested 11 of the most advanced AI chatbots in the world. The finding: these chatbots were 50% more sycophantic than actual humans. More eager to agree, more eager to over-explain, over-reassure, over-justify, even when the user was wrong. Sounds harmless. It isn't. A follow-up study out of MIT found that this constant stream of affirmation and justification is measurably eroding people's ability to think critically and self-correct, which means the tool millions of people now talk to every single day is quietly training humans to do more of the exact thing that's already hurting them. We built a machine that over-explains, and it's teaching us to over-explain right back. So where does this actually start? Not in adulthood, not at your job. Therapists are now tracing this pattern back to a specific, painfully ordinary moment in childhood. That's not what happened. You're overreacting. Small sentences said often enough that teach a developing brain something enormous. My own read of reality cannot be trusted. And if you can't trust your read of reality, you learn to build a case for it instead, every time, to everyone, for the rest of your life. That's not a personality trait. That's a scar with a script attached to it. And here's where it gets worse, because the habit doesn't just cost you externally, it rewires you internally. Every time you attach a disclaimer to your own opinion, you're sending your nervous system a message. This thought on its own isn't safe to say out loud. Do that enough times, and your brain starts treating your unedited thoughts as inherently suspect, even when you're alone with no one left to convince. You stop trusting your own mind raw. You only trust it wrapped in justification. Now, you'd think forcing someone to explain themselves would at least be useful for the person doing the pressuring. It isn't. A Cornell workplace study found that when employees sense they're being guilt-tripped into justifying their choices, they don't perform better afterward, they perform worse. The forced explanation doesn't build trust. It builds resentment, and resentment is expensive for everyone in the room, including the person who demanded the explanation in the first place. So if explaining yourself is this costly, what actually works? There's a term that quietly exploded across TikTok in 2026, gray rocking. Most people who use it have no idea where it came from. It was originally clinical advice, created for people escaping relationships with narcissists and manipulators. The strategy is simple. Give flat, unembellished responses. Be as uninteresting to engage with as a gray rock. Why does this matter to you, even if no narcissist is in your life? Because over-explaining is functionally feeding whoever is pressuring you. Every extra sentence is fuel. Every justification is an invitation to keep pushing. Stop feeding it, and most pressure has nowhere left to go. There's research to back this up directly. When people studied how refusals land, they found something almost nobody expects. A clean, unexplained no builds more trust and respect over time than a justified one. Not less, more. It makes sense once you think it through. A justified no invites negotiation, handing the other person a thread to pull. A clean no closes the door cleanly, respectfully, and without an opening for anyone to push back through. So why doesn't everyone just stop? Why do people who logically know all of this still catch themselves over-explaining an hour later? New assertiveness research gives us the answer, and it's more useful than just say no. Researchers have stopped treating boundary setting as one single skill. They now break it into 4 separate domains: social, behavioral, emotional, and mental. Can you speak up? Can you act on it? Can you trust the feeling underneath it? Can you accept the outcome without overprotecting yourself afterward? You might be strong in one domain and weak in another. You might be perfectly capable of saying no, but emotionally unable to sit with the discomfort of someone being upset about it. That gap is exactly where over-explaining sneaks back in. It's not a willpower failure. It's an unbalanced skill set. And once you know which domain is weak, you know exactly what to train. So, let's go back to that room one last time. The detective wasn't looking for a confession. He was looking for a story, and he knew that if he just stayed quiet and looked understanding enough, the other person would build that story for him piece by piece, out of pure discomfort, with silence. That's the twist. Silence was never the threat in that room. Explaining was. And the room you walk into every day, the group chat, the meeting, the family dinner, works exactly the same way. Every unnecessary sentence you add isn't protecting you. It's evidence you're voluntarily handing over. You don't owe anyone a case. You owe yourself a decision. You don't need a better excuse. You need fewer of them. So be at peace with your thoughts. Stop explaining yourself to others. And remember, always live at your own terms.